This was a slide from last week, and this is the new slide. Now, this table is a very important table as it kind of summarizes the difference between aerobic and anaerobic respiration. Keep in mind that at the end of the day, respiration deals with the creation of energy. And as you all remember, all living things, whether it be a human being, an animal, a plant, bacteria, a virus, they all need energy. Okay? Once it's living, it needs energy. So let's just go through this quickly and then we will take down the table. Aerobic versus anaerobic. I think the first one is really obvious. Aerobic respiration, oxygen is necessary. Of course, anaerobic, it's not necessary. The aerobic usually occurs in the mitochondria. I think everyone knows that by now, right? He's called the powerhouse of the cell. However, anaerobic respiration does not occur in the mitochondria. It occurs in the cytoplasm. I want you all just to quickly turn back to the picture of the cells. Remember when we now started class, I had given you all two diagrams, one of the animal cell and one of the plant cell. I just want you to turn back quickly and look for the part of the cell that's named the cytoplasm. So you have a visual, right? So anaerobic respiration takes part in that part of the cell. Now, at the end of the day, I'm just asking you all, which one do you all think is more efficient? Which one is the better type of respiration, aerobic or anaerobic? But what do you all think? Which one is the better one? Right? Aerobic is the better one, right? I always say that aerobic, the one that needs oxygen, is the better one, right? And anaerobic is most of the times a kind of backup plan. It is only use that when you have no choice. And there's a really good reason for it. Aerobic respiration produces more energy, large, the AMT stands for amount, large amounts of energy. Anaerobic is not quite as efficient. It doesn't produce a lot of energy. Remember, that's your backup plan. So your backup plan is not going to be as good as your first choice plan. So anaerobic only produces a little bit of energy. One of the reasons for that is that when your body is performing anaerobic respiration, you see the glucose, it is use up all the glucose. But anaerobic is do things halfway. The glucose that's involved in the respiration process, it is only use some of it. So it's a real wasteful procedure, right? So that is why you get less energy. Also, in aerobic respiration, the end products are what? Carbon dioxide and water, and of course, energy. I should probably put energy here. But in anaerobic respiration, you just get carbon dioxide, but you just also get things like lactic acid or even alcohol. But you just also get what? Energy. And as you all remember from last week, lactic acid is really bad. Okay? And we're going to discuss more of lactic acid today. We're going to discuss what happens when your body starts to perform anaerobic respiration and all this lactic acid builds up in your body. What does your body try to do with all that bad lactic acid? Obviously, it doesn't keep it. It has to get rid of it, and quickly. And of course, we have to discuss that a little bit. Your job now is to write down the entire table, take a 5 minutes, and let me know when you are finished, please. Right, so that's the difference between aerobic and anaerobic. Now, here's the thing. We're going to discuss what is oxygen depth. I'm sure everyone has noticed this at some point in their life, right? If you run a really, really, really long race or do something like of high intensity, right? When you are finished, you notice you just be out of breath. And of course, you'll be kind of struggling to breathe. You're trying your best to get oxygen into your body, but you're not able to do it fast enough. And it's a very uncomfortable feeling. But after a few, like a minute or so, you notice you get back your breath, right? You'll be able to breathe properly. You call this your oxygen depth. Now, let me explain why there's something called oxygen depth. When your body is performing aerobic respiration, it's not a problem because you have enough oxygen, your body is comfortable, you're not out of breath. But the minute you start to do something that's really, really hard, something that's high intensity, your body cannot take in enough what? Oxygen. So your body reverts to or goes to anaerobic respiration. Remember, in anaerobic respiration, your body does not need oxygen. So what happens is that the glucose is converted into lactic acid and energy. But keep in mind that lactic acid is bad. So when you are finished now, when you're finished with the high intensity exercise, your body has a lot of lactic acid built up in it. So it has to get rid of it. It has to break down that lactic acid. And guess what your body needs to break down and get rid of the lactic acid? Oxygen. So that is why after you do something of high intensity, you just be breathing real hard. You are trying to get enough oxygen in your body to break down the lactic acid. And once your body breaks down the bad lactic acid, it will get rid of it after. And then you will feel better. So oxygen depth. And oxygen depth is the amount of extra oxygen needed to remove the lactic acid present in the body. Everyone's okay with that explanation? You're just breathing in hard to get more oxygen in your body so it can attack the bad lactic acid and break it down and get rid of it, right? Write down everything you need to on the screen and we will be moving on. All right, so let's see what's going on here. We have a little magic genie here and let's read the instructions. All right, now this is what I need you to do in the first question. We're going, well, they said this is aerobic respiration, right? So this is aerobic respiration. You need to fill in what goes in block 1, 2, 3, and 4. Take your time, write down your answers. You don't have to write down the question. Write down your answers in your books and then let me know when you are finished. If you have time and you want to send your answers across, not a problem, but your first priority is to write the answers in your book. Solutions here. For number 1, right? Remember, it's the respiration process. So for respiration, but for anaerobic respiration, you have 2 things, right? You need glucose and you need oxygen. Now, I know some of you are going to ask, that doesn't matter if you have it the other way around, like meaning that you put the oxygen first and then the glucose. No, it really doesn't matter. But the point is, the 2 things that are going in are glucose and oxygen. And there are basically three things that will come out. During respiration, you will get energy, carbon dioxide, and the other one would be water. Right now, you also get heat. But remember, I told you that, most textbooks are going to leave out the heat part. But later on, I talk about way down, coming to the end of integrated science and HSB, right? I'm going to explain why that heat part is necessary. But right now, let's leave it out. Also, anybody wants to tell me, just for a little extra knowledge, which part of the cell does the respiration take place? Which part of the cell? Is it the cytoplasm? Is it the nucleus? Is it the cell wall? Right? And you all know it's the mitochondria. Right? So let's see if we get a prize for getting this out. Now, you have to be honest with yourself, right? Only if you got everything correct, you can collect the imaginary prize. So let's see what the prize is. Oh, you get $40. You will probably get hoping for something a little more exquisite, right? If in the exam, instead of water, like you only had 2 blocks free, and instead of water, you put heat, the CSEC will not give you the marks. If you have 3 blocks and you have to choose 3 out of the 4, it has to be carbon dioxide, water, and energy. All right? So heat will not be accepted for the CSEC exam in this type of question. Let's move on to the next question and see what's next. All right. So, sometimes in the exam, they just bring a worded question, right? Meaning that they will ask you to explain something. And of course, you have to write a paragraph. Now, I know a lot of students can explain something in their head. Like they know what the answer is, but when it's time to write it on paper, you just shut down. How much people are like that? That when it's time to write it on paper, you just run into problems. Okay? That used to be me too in school. Remember the carbon dioxide, I'm just going to put CO2 because that's the symbol for carbon dioxide. It's inside the cell. So it's inside the cell and the cell does not want it. So what's going to happen? The cell is going to what? Send the carbon dioxide into the blood vessels. Now I'm just asking, right? If the carbon dioxide is inside, for it to go to the outside, what is the name of that process? It starts with the letter D. You want to take a guess? It's also a passive process. Right, Clement, correct. Amanda and Dishan, correct. That process is called diffusion. And I love how so many people just type the answer and knew it off the top of their head. So I'm going to try, at some point, I want to use the word diffuse, right? Or diffusion, anything around that. So it will diffuse into the what? The blood. And of course, the blood will take it to this part of the lungs. Remember, but what do you all call this part of the lungs? The N part of the lungs, the final part of the lungs. It starts with the letter A. That's the alveoli or alveolus, right? Well, I'll put alveolus, right? So that's what I kind of about there. So let's just assume that the carbon dioxide is this brown spot here, right? So the carbon dioxide went into the blood. And of course, it will diffuse across this barrier here from the blood into the alveoli. And of course, you are going to breathe out. And when you breathe out, it will get rid of it. So let's take a look at my answer. read it, make sure you understand it, and when you're finished, take down my answer and please give me some feedback on if you had something similar to what I had, or if it was far off or it was in between. I'm really interested in knowing. Prizes. Even if you gave an answer that was okay-ish, you can still claim the prize. Oh, look at that. You got a rare golden coin. It's probably worth over $1,000 and something dollars. Probably $10,000. Right? So let's see what the next question is about. All right. So this one here, remember, you're not writing down the question. You have part A, B, C, D, part 1. You try your best to answer all the questions. You don't have to waste time sending the answers to me. The main focus is this. You write down the answers in your books by thinking it through properly. And just let me know when you are finished. Now, like I said, this is going to be a question about anaerobic respiration. So before I show the answers, let's start off with glucose. So in anaerobic respiration, and we know it's anaerobic because they even said without oxygen. What are the byproducts of anaerobic respiration when yeast is involved? I believe you get a few things. You get carbon dioxide. So CO2 is for the symbol for carbon dioxide. What else do you get? You get 3 things. So one of them is definitely energy. But what's the missing one in between here? Anybody wants to tell me? What is the missing item? Is it water? I don't think it's water. For look at the one with yeast, involving yeast. Right, not lactic acid. Some of y'all are mixing it up. The one that's missing for yeast is alcohol. Right? Remember, it have different types of anaerobic respiration. It have some for human beings and animals. And then it have a separate one for what? Plants and yeast and whatnot. Right? So you have to know the difference between the two. So keep your eyes up here every once in a while when we start to answer these questions. In part A, explain why the yeast and sugar solution was made up in boiled water and cooled. In other words, before they actually started the experiment, right, they boiled the water. Why would they boil the water before you add the yeast and whatnot? It's because you want, a clean environment. You don't want anything other than yeast in that water. So other types of bacteria which could affect the final results, you want to boil the water and kill off all of those other bacteria because that could contaminate the experiment. And I'm sure everybody knows by now, when you boil water, you kill off all the bacteria and whatnot. So let's see the answer for the first one. Well, I have all the answers here. I could not make the answer fit here, so I wrote it here. So the water is boiled to remove oxygen and bacteria, right? So you have a clean experiment without contamination. Part B, after some time, bubbles of gas were seen in the test tube. Well, obviously the bubbles of gas were carbon dioxide. Right? When you put carbon dioxide in a liquid, you usually see what? Bubbles. You know what has carbon dioxide in it and produces a lot of bubbles? Sweet drink, like Coca-Cola. I don't really drink sweet drink. Banana sweet drink. I don't know. What's called it? Oh Lord, I already don't drink sweet drink. But like Coca-Cola, it's have bubbles. Guess what? Those bubbles are carbon dioxide. Oh, Sprite. Sorry, someone reminded me. Sprite. I sold already don't drink soft drinks. I can't remember the names. All right. And you all see for yourself from the equation here, anytime you have anaerobic respiration involving yeast, you get carbon dioxide. So that carbon dioxide is going into the test tube, and of course, it forms water, bubbles. Here's something that you all may not have known, right? Whenever carbon dioxide comes in contact with a special chemical called lime water, it's very popular in the labs, it will turn milky or cloud white. In fact, that is how you just test for carbon dioxide. You just take lime water and add carbon dioxide, and if it turns milky or kind of cloudy, then you know that it is carbon dioxide. Right? Right. So D part 1, right? Remember, if you're doing this test more than once, you want to make sure it's a fair test. If you're doing it at 10 degrees and you're doing it at 30 degrees, to make it fair in both tests, you should use the same amount of sugar, the same amount of yeast, and the same amount of water. How much of y'all had D part 1 correct? And that's a kind of common sense one. How much of y'all had that one completely correct? Right? Right? It's like if you're running out, if you're testing two people on how fast they can run. When you're doing that experiment, if one person runs 100 meters, you have to make sure that the other person also running 100 meters to depend on who's the better, to determine who's the better runner, right? Oh. Right, so oh, sorry. I made a small mistake. It's supposed to be same. Thanks. Right? Use the same amount of sugar, yeast, and water. Right? Now, this is something you all may not have known. At what temperature would lime water, sorry, again, my mouth a little dry here. At what temperature would the lime water change color most quickly? Now, to answer that question, the more carbon dioxide it has inside the lime water, the faster it will change to milky white. So for more carbon dioxide to be produced, you need more respiration. The more anaerobic respiration that is taking place, the more carbon dioxide will be produced. Now, it just so happens, you all may not have known this unless someone told you, is that yeast does perform respiration better at around 30 degrees. When it's too cold or too warm, the yeast does not perform respiration properly. In fact, if the temperature is like over 40 degrees, the yeast does die. And of course, if the yeast dies, no respiration is going to take place. In fact, how much of y'all just play around in the kitchen? Like when your parents baking bread, you just help them out. How much of y'all just do that? Right? Now, if you go in the kitchen, like when your parents are cooking bread or sweet bread or some form of flour, they must put yeast in it. So if you read the packet of yeast, whichever brand you buy, Pan or whatever, whichever one you buy, look at the back of it. It does have instructions. When you're mixing yeast, they just tell you that the temperature, make sure it's around 30 degrees Celsius. Because at around 30 degrees Celsius, the yeast does perform respiration real good. And it does get plenty carbon dioxide. And you're probably wondering, but why do you need carbon dioxide in bread? When you now mix the bread, the yeast is perform respiration and the carbon dioxide is built up inside the bread and it is make the bread raise. You ever hear somebody say, hey, let the bread raise? Let me put that in scientific terms for you. Letting the bread raise means you are letting the yeast perform respiration the respiration produces carbon dioxide, and that gas, carbon dioxide, fills up the bread and makes it look larger. It makes the bread raised. And raised bread is cooked a little better than unraised bread, right? Right, so take down all the answers, right? All right, so the price for this one was a samurai sword. Sure, it's worth a lot, but if somebody gave me an authentic samurai sword, I probably won't sell it. All right, so let's move on to the next question. All right, so your job is just to answer everything here. In case you all didn't know, well, it says at the top, this is our alveolus, and the alveoli or alveolus, and it's coming in contact with the blood vessel over here, right? Some of the stuff you will know, some of the stuff you will not know. Just answer what you can. The more pleasant version of this diagram was this. You'll remember when I had drawn this diagram, you had seen this diagram what, a few weeks ago, or I think you saw it today also. This diagram and this diagram is the same diagram, but this is the, how you say, the more realistic attempt at it. Okay. All right. So this is the blood vessel. This is your blood vessel. This is supposed to be the kind of circular alveoli. After. These are the answers I came up with, right? A is what you call the white blood cells. And of course, if you didn't know it, now you know, right? B, within the blood, you have something called red blood cells. C is the actual alveolus. And believe it or not, D, remember I told you all, I think it was last week, that over here needs to be what? A little bit wet. It needs to have moisture. Do you all remember why the inside of the alveoli or alveolus, do you all remember why it has to have moisture? Why does it need to be wet? Right. It's the what? Dissolve the oxygen, right? It's the dissolve the oxygen. Because when oxygen now comes into the alveoli, like you now breathe in, the symbol for oxygen is O2, by the way, oxygen. The oxygen just cannot soak through from the alveoli into the blood cells. It cannot just diffuse across. It has to touch the moisture, dissolve in the moisture, and only when it dissolves, it moves across by diffusion, right? Someone asked if they use, instead of saying a film of moisture, is it okay to say water? I've never seen anyone just come out right in the CXC exam and just say water. To be safe, I would prefer if you use the word moisture. And in place of the word film, you could also use a thin layer of moisture. Any of those terms would work, but just don't say it's water. All right, just to be safe. Anybody knows what's the purpose of white blood cells? Like in your blood, you have two colors of cells. You have red and you have white. The red is used to transport oxygen. He's like a taxi service for oxygen. But what do the white blood cells do? Just as a little side topic. Right, they fight against diseases. Remember, diseases are always trying to enter our body, and our body needs to fight back against it. The white blood cells come like our army. They fight for us. They fight against diseases and sickness. So without white blood cells, you would die very, very quickly. Okay? Right, so B was pretty easy. B, I think I gave away the answer when I was talking. This is a very thin blood vessel. It's called a capillary. X shows the carbon dioxide leaving, and Y shows the carbon dioxide going into the blood cells. Okay, so those are your answers. Begin to take down the answers, and let's just see what the prize was. Right? Oh, no, this was this. Right, so here's a little note. White blood cells protect your body against infection. I just said that. Oh, look at the prize again. A prehistoric axe is probably worth thousands of dollars. It's a genuine prehistoric axe, right? So let me know when you're finished taking out everything on the screen. We will move on. All right. So here's another question, real similar to the one you did. Similar diagram again. I can't remember what year this is, right? But they change around the question. Instead of asking you for one-word answers, they're asking you for, in some instances, a little description of what's going on. Right? Get started. Let me know when you are finished. Question. How much of you all had part D correct? The name of the process by which the gases pass over. I think we went through this a lot of times already, right? It's crossing over by diffusion. We all know that already. What's next? Z. Where is Z? Right? Now, Z is the answer was so simple. You know, sometimes the answer is be so simple, you just can't believe that is the answer. This is just showing the gases leaving or coming in from the lungs, right? You're breathing in, you're breathing out. That is all it's showing. F, what happens to oxygen once it enters the blood? So remember, the oxygen is first inside here, and it will diffuse across and go into the bloodstream. Now, here's the thing. Inside your blood, there's something called red blood cells. Your red blood cells look like a kind of donut, right? Something like a donut. And inside the red blood cell, let's put red blood cell here, red blood cell. And this is something we will discuss in detail in another topic. But the red blood cells contain a very special protein. And the name of that protein is this guy, hemoglobin. H-A-E, hemoglobin. What happens when the oxygen finally makes it into the blood? The red blood cells act like a taxi service. The oxygen will jump on the red blood cells. It will come. How it is do, right? It is combined with the special protein. And once they combine with the red blood cell, the taxi, the red blood cell, takes off and it goes to the cells, right? So that's the short answer here, right? The oxygen combines with the hemoglobin on the red blood cells and forms a special compound. And the name actually makes sense. When oxygen combines with hemoglobin, what could be a better name? Oxyhemoglobin, right? And G, well, there are special cells that line the trachea, right? The trachea is the part of, is the passage from your nose all the way down into your lungs, right? And they have a special layer of mucus, which what traps the dust particles and bacteria. And there's something called cilia. Some of you all were saying that it have special hairs, like on your nose and whatnot. But believe it or not, right? There's actually small hair-like structures inside your body. I'm talking about inside your trachea and going into your lungs, right? So these special hairs, they trap particles and whatnot, right? And of course, they slowly move it back to your nose so you can get rid of it. Right? So most of you all were correct, but you didn't guess the mucus part. Mucus is very, very important. And most people think of mucus as being gross, but mucus actually is very, very important, okay? It traps dust, it traps bacteria and prevents it from going down into your lungs. So take down all the answers and of course, let me know when you are finished. Yes, sir. Oh, you get a jetpack. Look at that. Oh, and I have a little note here in blue, right? So for those who ever wanted a jetpack to fly around the place, well, you have it now. Take down the item in blue also, the blue part. Right? For those who were not clear on the homework, don't worry, I will make sure and explain it back just now. But next week, we are starting with this topic, the digestive system. So let me get the homework clear. One, right? The homework, you have to go through back all the questions today, all the quiz questions. And what I need you to do is write down the actual questions this time. So you're taking those same questions, you're writing it back properly in your books, and you're going to try to answer them also without looking back at the answers. And just to kind of jog your memory, okay? Obviously, after you try your best, you can look back at the answers and see if you were right or wrong. But the main thing is you want to have a proper copy of those questions in your notebooks now with the correct answers. So when you're revising for term tests a few months from now, it's in one place. And you see those same questions you did there today, those, believe me, I've been teaching a long time. Those are the same types of questions your teacher is going to bring for your term test. Okay? All right, guys. So once you understand what the homework is, you are free to leave and come prepared to start a new topic next week, the digestive system.